Did you know that a tourniquet applied incorrectly can actually do more harm than good? Things like severe nerve loss and loss of a limb happen when you put on a tourniquet wrong. If you didn't know that, you do now. Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Dozer with Dozer Rescue. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the CAT tourniquet, the combat application tourniquet. We're going to go over how to apply it, when to use it, when not to use it, and a whole lot more. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's get right into it. All right, guys. So tourniquets. What's the point of them? Why do we need them? Why is this video being made? Well, a tourniquet is a device, specifically the combat action tourniquet, is a device that is used to stop massive hemorrhaging on the limbs of a person. So if I was bleeding out and there was a bunch of bright red blood, which is called arterial bleeding, from my arm or from my leg, my femoral artery, which is right here on the inside of my leg, if that's bleeding, you can bleed out in as little as 3 minutes, completely dead. So in order to stop that arterial bleeding, which can occur from a variety of things, it doesn't have to just be combat wounds and gunshots. It can also be from chainsaw accidents and cuts, lacerations on your arms or whatnot. So having a tourniquet on hand, no matter what situation you're in or what profession you're in, is always a good idea, because you can always step in and help someone else, or you can use it to save your own life. So these tourniquets are made here to stop massive bleeding on your limbs, and that's it. It's not meant for the neck, it's not meant for the torso, it's not meant for any other part of the body. These things are purely meant for the limbs of a human being. All right, guys, so this is our tourniquet. More specifically, our CAT, our CAT tourniquet, our combat application tourniquet. So this type of tourniquet is typically very common. You'll find it in a lot of different medical bags and kits. It's what's very widely used in the military, law enforcement, firefighting. This is just kind of the gold standard, if you will. Although there's a ton of different tourniquets, this is going to be the main one that you're going to see out there. So this video is going to be talking about this one since it's most universally accepted. So with the CAT tourniquet, you've got two sides to it. On the back side here, you'll see it's real smooth. You don't have access to the windlass rod or anything. It's just easy and smooth. This is the portion that is actually going to be touching the patient itself. This goes directly onto their skin. The next side here, this has all your Velcro, as well as access to your windlass rod and your little time marker. So how this works is I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it on my arm here, and then I'll cut to another clip and show you guys what it looks like on my leg. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can either do it open like this and apply it, or you can cut some time off and make it smaller to fit around the limb that you're applying it to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it up here high and tight. I don't want any creases, and I don't want it twisted on itself, okay? So there's a couple different ways to do this. You can either do it high and tight, which is the most recommended rapid method, or if you can clearly see where the arterial bleed, meaning that bright red blood that just keeps coming out quickly, that massive bleed, you can do 2 to 3 inches above that. That's preferred, but if you can't see it or identify that actual bleeding site, then you want to go high and tight. I also want to make a small disclaimer. The advice that I'm giving you today and what I'm showing you and teaching you is not medical advice. It is purely for educational purposes only. Okay, so now that we have the tourniquet just wrapped over my arm, high and tight, I'm now going to cinch it down and pull it. I'm going to keep that tension. I'm going to wrap it around the arm, around the Velcro portion, until we're here. So the Velcro is securing it here. It's high and tight on my arm. It already feels pretty tight, and we're going to have to crank this thing down even tighter to actually stop our pulse, stop that blood flow that's leaking from this arm, okay? So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stick, this is called the windlass rod, and I'm going to twist it and just keep twisting it until I can't twist it anymore. For this example, this is pretty tight. I'm only going to twist it a couple times, but I can already feel the blood starting to shut off from my arm, which is what we want. We want to be able to stop that blood flow from coming out. So from here, now that the tourniquet has been tightened correctly, we're going to take our tail, and just to kind of help clean it up, we're just going to wrap it around the windlass rod and secure it back on itself. So that way it's just a little bit nicer and neater when you're transporting your patient, or just helps out if EMS is coming to assist you. And then finally we have our little time marker, our time stamp. And all we want to do is get a Sharpie or something and write the time on here when we applied that tourniquet. Now that's crucial because we need to know as a medical provider the exact time that this tourniquet was applied, so then we can further evaluate and assess our patient and see what the next steps of action are going to be. So you want to write your time on here. If you don't have this little piece right here, that's okay. You can take your Sharpie or your marker and you can write it on their forehead, you can write it on a piece of paper and attach it to their chest. Just some kind of very obvious indicator of when this tourniquet was applied. So my hand's going a little purple here. As you can see, this tourniquet has been applied correctly. My veins are starting to show a little bit. That's a good tourniquet. So now let's take a look at what it looks like on the leg. Okay guys, now we're gonna go over how to apply a tourniquet to a leg. So just a couple different things on this one. We talked about putting a tourniquet on 2 to 3 inches above the wound ideally, but high and tight is also a very good method. So in this example, I just want to show you guys, let's just say that I'm bleeding somewhere in this area, just right above the kneecap. And so we're going to apply our tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above the wound. I also want to show you guys that when you're applying your tourniquet, and in this example, I'm doing the open method, so I'm not creating that loop in advance, I'm just putting it on as is. All right, so I'm taking the tourniquet, putting it on. I'm gonna get it nice and tight, just from that pull right there, okay? And let's say, again, I'm bleeding somewhere in this area, just above the kneecap. I wanna be 2 to 3 inches right above that wound. So I'm gonna pull hard, take my tail, continue that pressure, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, wrap it around, and Velcro itself onto the tourniquet, to the Velcro portion. Now, when you're applying the tourniquet, it's important to let your patient know that, hey, I'm applying this tourniquet on you. I'm trying to stop your blood flow. It's gonna hurt. So just be prepared for that. You don't have to explain how it's gonna work or any of that. Just, you're gonna have to do it quickly, but you do just wanna let them know, hey, this is gonna hurt real quick, okay? Just giving you a heads up. So that way they're not in shock when they feel an immense amount of pain when you're cutting off their circulation. So the tourniquet's on. We're gonna take our windlass rod, we're gonna twist it, and just keep twisting it, and keep twisting it. And again, it's gonna hurt them, but we're trying to get this as tight as possible. We're gonna secure it using our little securing fastener right there. And I can feel now this thing is really tight, which is excellent. And then finally, we're gonna take our little time marker right here. We're gonna take our pen or Sharpie, preferably. We're gonna write the time that we applied it in big, bold numbers right there. And that's that. So our injuries in this area, 2 to 3 inches above the wound. It's on nice and tight. I've told the patient I'm gonna apply this on, it's gonna hurt, and we're ready to rock. We put our time on there, that's good. The way that you can assess this and make sure that it's on correctly is if there's no more blood coming out, first and foremost, but also the pulses in the feet, right? The pedal pulses should be gone as well. So anything below the tourniquet, if you're looking for a pulse, should be absolutely gone, should be absent. And if there's any blood below here, which is the point of why we're applying the tourniquet, the blood should all be stopped and ceased. If that is not the case, you can actually take a second tourniquet and you can apply it either high and tight or above the 2 to 3 inches above that wound if this one is not there. So again, if there is continued bleeding after you've applied the first tourniquet, apply a second tourniquet in the other position. So either high and tight or 2 to 3 inches above the wound. You can do both, and that's for worst case scenarios. I just want to show you guys real quickly what that looks like. So as you can see here, if I'm bleeding right here above the knee, 2 to 3 inches. I've got my first tourniquet on. Let's say the bleeding still has not stopped yet. I went ahead and went over to the high and tight method for my second tourniquet and applied it as high as I possibly could right here on my leg. It's nice and tight here, and now the bleeding has stopped. And again, vice versa. Let's say you apply the tourniquet high and tight on the leg first or on the arm. The bleeding has not stopped wherever it's coming from. You can then go back and identify where the bleeding is coming from. Put your next tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above that wound, and hopefully that should stop all the blood flow. But I just wanted to give you guys a visual example of what 2 tourniquets looks like when applied correctly. And the final thing we're going to talk about in terms of applying a tourniquet is applying it fast. We got to make sure that we can apply our tourniquet in 1 minute or less, so that way we don't bleed out and lose our patient. So with the tourniquet, remember, you want to apply it either high and tight, 2 to 3 inches above the wound, and get it under a minute. If you can do all that and do it properly, you're going to save somebody's life. Because somebody, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, can bleed out within as little as 3 minutes. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate for you guys tourniquet in pouch of what that looks like, and applying tourniquet in under 1 minute to myself. So go ahead and start the timer and go. Take the tourniquet out. I'm put it on high and tight. Sit it down best I can with the one hand here. Wrap it around. I'm not going to worry about that fancy little wrapping around the windlass rod. I'm just focused on getting it on as tight as I possibly can. Okay, take my time, take my pen or marker, write my time on there, and then I can just kind of tuck this away or wrap it around. So that's really not important, but the important part is the tourniquet's on, it's tight, and then I should be able to feel that my pulses are gone. Yep, I don't feel pulses. So we're good there. No pulses. I chose high and tight. Again, you can choose 2 to 3 inches above the wound. If you can identify where the wound is at, where the bleeding is coming from, mark your time on there, and that's really it. All right, so now I just want to take a quick second to talk to you guys a little bit more in depth about the tourniquets. So the first thing I want to discuss with you is when not to use a tourniquet. So you don't want to use a tourniquet if there's not an arterial bleed, aka that bright red squirting blood. You don't want to use a tourniquet for that. You don't want to apply a tourniquet on the neck. You don't want to apply a tourniquet anywhere else in the body. You just want to use the tourniquet on the arms and the legs. And you also don't want to apply a tourniquet on the joints themselves. So do not place your tourniquet on your elbows or on your knees. You want to keep it just on the limbs, above or below the joints. You don't want to use a tourniquet for just little cuts and scrapes. Even if there's a significant cut or laceration that looks bad, if it's not bleeding out profusely, you don't need to use a tourniquet. You can pretty much just use pressure. You can use cloth, you can use paper towels, you can use a shirt, if you have gauze, whatever you have available to you, and you can just apply pressure to that wound, hold steady pressure, and that will likely stop the bleeding. But again, tourniquets are used for heavy, massive bleeding, massive hemorrhaging. That is when you want to use a tourniquet. When you see that bright red squirting blood, it'll usually come out like a heartbeat. It'll come out to the rhythm of that heartbeat. So it won't just be a constant squirt out. So it'll usually kind of shoot out with the heart. That's how you can identify when to use a tourniquet. And again, you do not use a tourniquet when it's just kind of everyday little cuts and scrapes, or it may look bad, but it's not quite an arterial bleed, so you're not going to need to use a tourniquet. Now, some problems that can occur with the tourniquet is if you leave the tourniquet on too long, you can cause severe nerve loss, a nerve damage. You can also lose that limb if it's applied improperly. So let's say that you have a pretty significant cut or injury to your arm, and you put on a tourniquet thinking that you're doing the right thing. Well, as time goes on, you could actually lose that limb because you didn't need to apply a tourniquet in the first place. And now that you're at the hospital, they have no choice but to cut the limb off because you killed that limb. You cut off the oxygen, you cut off the blood supply, and that limb is now dead, or that portion of the limb is now dead. So they now have to take that limb off. So that's a pretty significant thing. So that's why you want to make sure that you're trained up and you're practicing your algorithm and your training that's provided to you by your agency or your organization or whoever you fall under for tourniquet usage. They're also, the reason that I bring up the cat tourniquet and why we're discussing it in this video is that they're great because they're pretty much universal. They're used almost in all kinds of different organizations and agencies all around the world. They're very easy to use, very easy to manage, and they're pretty inexpensive as well. So if you would like to purchase your own tourniquet, please feel free to use the link down in my description to get yourself one as well. There's also a bunch of different holsters and accessories that you can use to attach your tourniquets to pretty much whatever and whenever you want. So go ahead and check out that link if you're interested in getting your own tourniquet. And finally, the last thing I'll say is tourniquets don't go without their issues, right? They're great, they're simple to use, but there's still issues. The first issue for me personally being is the Velcro. The Velcro gets stuck very easily, especially when you're in military uniforms or military gear, vests and things like that. Everything is pretty much hook and loop or with that MOLLE system. So with the Velcro on the tourniquets, they tend to stick on almost everything. Sometimes they get stuck on the holsters they're in. Sometimes they stick to your clothes, your patches, everything. So just keep in mind when you're using them, try to keep them free from anything that might attach to that Velcro to prevent them from sticking when you're trying to use them. You can kind of see this when I did a demonstration of me applying the tourniquet to my own arm under time. I had a little bit of an issue with it sticking to its own holster. So those are just things to consider and just think about when you're using them or when you're mounting them or securing them. With that being said, I think that's pretty much it. I think I've covered a lot of the topics. So if you guys have any other questions or you want more clarification on specifics, please feel free to reach out to me or comment down below and I'll get back to you, no problem. So as you can see, tourniquets are an incredibly important piece of equipment. It's great to know how to use for yourself. It's great to teach others how to use. So when a worst case scenario happens, you can be prepared. If you want to see where I carry my tourniquets, go ahead and click on the next video there. It's talking about my personal medic bag, how I have it set up, and you can see where I apply my tourniquets onto my kit. Thank you guys for watching so much and supporting the channel. I hope you guys have a great day. Remember, stay safe, stay prepared, and stay tactical. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. God bless.